Lucas Hayes stood in front of a crumbling seaside cafe with $17 in his pocket, a sleeping 4-year-old on his shoulder, and nowhere left to run. The woman behind the counter looked up from wiping down tables, young, tired, wearing an apron stained with coffee and something that might have been marinara. She studied him for exactly 3 seconds before saying, "You need work or you need food?" He opened his mouth to answer, but she cut him off. "Doesn't matter, you're hired. But I'm warning you now. This place has a way of breaking people who can't handle the truth. Like this story and comment what city you're watching from so I can see how far this journey goes." The bell above the door chimed as Lucas stepped fully inside the drift, and the smell hit him immediately. Burnt coffee, salt air drifting through a cracked window, and something sweet baking in the back. His daughter Mia shifted against his shoulder, her small hand gripping the collar of his jacket even in sleep. The woman set down her rag and came around the counter. She was younger than he'd first thought, maybe 30, with dark hair pulled into a messy ponytail and eyes that looked like they'd stopped being surprised by anything a long time ago. She wore jeans with a hole in one knee and a faded black t-shirt under the apron. No name tag. "She okay?" the woman asked, nodding toward Mia. "Just tired," Lucas said. "We've been traveling." "From where?" "Denver." "That's a long way to come for coffee." Lucas didn't smile. He was too exhausted to pretend he had a sense of humor left. "I'm looking for work. Anything. I saw the help wanted sign in the window." The woman crossed her arms and leaned against the counter. "What kind of work you done before?" "Software development, project management. I ran a team of 12 at a tech startup." The words tasted like ash in his mouth. Past tense. Everything in his life was past tense now. She raised an eyebrow. "And now you're here asking to wash dishes? If that's what you've got. Why? Does it matter?" "Yeah," she said flatly. "It does." Lucas shifted Mia's weight. His shoulder ached, his back ached. Everything ached. "My wife left, took the car, the savings account, and her lawyer. Company I worked for folded 3 months later. I've got about 36 hours before my last motel reservation runs out, and after that, I've got nothing. So yeah, I'll wash your dishes." The woman studied him for a long moment. She had the kind of face that didn't give anything away. No pity, no judgment, nothing. Just a flat, evaluating stare that made him feel like she was reading a balance sheet. "You got a place to stay?" she asked. "Working on it. There's a room upstairs, it's not much. Comes with the job if you want it. Rent comes out of your check, but it's cheaper than anything else you'll find in this town." Lucas blinked. "You're offering me a job and a place to live? You don't even know me." "I know enough," she said. She moved back behind the counter and pulled out a clipboard with a single sheet of paper on it. "Fill this out. Name, emergency contact if you've got one, social security number. I pay cash every Friday. You work 6 days a week, mornings and lunch shift, dishwasher, busboy, whatever needs doing. You don't steal, you don't show up drunk, and you don't cause problems with the other staff. That's it?" "That's it." She paused, then added, "I'm Victoria." "Lucas?" He set Mia down gently in one of the booth seats, her head lolling against the vinyl, and took the clipboard. His hands were shaking slightly as he wrote. He hadn't realized how scared he'd been until this moment, how close to the edge he'd come. Victoria disappeared into the back and returned with a blanket, which she draped over Mia without a word. Then she poured 2 cups of coffee and set one in front of Lucas. "Drink," she said. "You look like you're about to fall over." He did. The coffee was strong and bitter and exactly what he needed. They sat in silence for a minute, the only sound the hum of the ancient refrigerator and the distant crash of waves against the rocks outside. "Can I ask you something?" Lucas said finally. "You can ask." "Why'd you hire me? You didn't even check references." Victoria wrapped both hands around her coffee cup. Her nails were short and unpolished, her fingers marked with small scars. Because you walked in here with a kid on your shoulder and $17 in your eyes, and you didn't ask for charity. You asked for work. That tells me something." "What does it tell you?" That you're not done yet." She took a sip of coffee. People who are done don't ask for jobs. They ask for handouts or they disappear. You're still fighting. I respect that. Lucas felt something tight in his chest loosen just slightly. Thank you. Don't thank me yet, Victoria said. This isn't a favor. I need someone who will work hard and not complain. You slack off, you're gone. You cause drama, you're gone. You make my life harder instead of easier, you're gone. Clear? Clear. Good. She stood up and grabbed a ring of keys from behind the register. Come on, I'll show you the room. The apartment was at the top of a narrow staircase that smelled like old wood and sea salt. Victoria unlocked the door and flicked on a light, revealing a single room with a kitchenette in one corner, a bathroom barely big enough to turn around in, and a double bed pushed against the far wall. There was a small window that looked out over the ocean, and a space heater that rattled when Victoria kicked it. It's not the Ritz, she said. It's perfect, Lucas replied, and he meant it. It had a lock on the door and a roof that didn't leak. That was more than he'd had 2 hours ago. Victoria handed him the keys. First week's rent is $150. I'll take it out of your first check. You start tomorrow morning, 5 a.m. Don't be late. I won't be. She turned to leave, then paused in the doorway. Lucas? Yeah? That warning I gave you earlier about this place breaking people. I meant it. Her voice was quieter now, almost gentle. This town, this cafe, me, we're not what we look like. Things are going to get complicated, and when they do, you're going to have a choice. You can run, or you can stay and deal with it. Just be ready for that. Before he could ask what she meant, she was gone, her footsteps echoing down the stairs. Lucas stood in the middle of his new home, listening to the sound of the ocean and his daughter's soft breathing, and wondered what the hell he'd just walked into. Halt. 5 a.m. came too early. Lucas's phone alarm went off in the dark, and for a disoriented moment he didn't know where he was. Then he remembered. The cafe, Victoria, the room with the rattling heater. He dragged himself out of bed, careful not to wake Mia, and stumbled into the shower. The water was lukewarm at best, but it woke him up. He dressed in the same jeans and flannel shirt he'd worn yesterday, his only clean clothes, and made his way downstairs. The cafe was already lit up, warm light spilling onto the empty street. Victoria was inside, pulling chairs off tables and setting them down with practiced efficiency. She looked up when he walked in. You're early, she said. Didn't want to risk being late. Smart. She gestured toward the back. Kitchen's through there. Marco's already here. He'll show you the ropes. Besides. Lucas pushed through the swinging door and found himself in a narrow galley kitchen that looked like it had been assembled from spare parts. The dishwasher was ancient. The stove had 6 burners, but only 4 that worked, and the refrigerator made a sound like a dying cat. A man in his 50s stood at the prep station, chopping onions with the kind of speed that only came from decades of practice. He had gray hair pulled back in a ponytail, tattoos covering both forearms, and the build of someone who'd done hard labor his entire life. You must be the new guy, he said without looking up. Lucas. Marco. He nodded toward a stack of dishes piled precariously next to the sink. That's your station. Wash, rinse, stack. Don't break anything, don't let anything pile up, and don't get in my way when I'm on the line. We clear? Clear. Good. Get started. The next 4 hours were a blur of hot water, soap, and an endless stream of plates, cups, and silverware. Lucas fell into a rhythm. Scrape, wash, rinse, stack, repeat. His hands turned red from the heat, and his back started to ache from standing in one position, but he didn't stop. He couldn't afford to stop. Around 9, Victoria came back to check on him. She watched him work for a minute without saying anything, then grabbed a towel and started drying the clean dishes. You don't have to do that, Lucas said. I know. She worked in silence for a moment, then added, You're faster than the last guy. Yeah? Yeah, he quit after 2 days. Said the work was too hard. Lucas snorted. Clearly he never had a 4-year-old who refused to sleep. Victoria smiled, a small quick thing that disappeared almost as fast as it appeared. You got family helping with her? No, just me. What about her mother? Gone. Lucas didn't elaborate and Victoria didn't push. They worked side by side until the lunch rush started, and then Victoria disappeared back out front to handle the customers. Through the service window, Lucas could see her moving between tables, refilling coffee, taking orders, chatting with regulars like she'd known them her entire life. She was good at it, he realized. Natural, like she'd been doing this forever. But there was something off about the whole thing. The cafe was small, barely a dozen tables, and it clearly wasn't making a fortune. So why did Victoria own it? And why was she working the floor herself instead of hiring someone to do it? He was still thinking about it when Marco called him over. "You know anything about refrigerators?" Marco asked. "A little. Why?" Marco pointed to the walk-in cooler in the corner. "Door's been sticking for a week. Victoria keeps saying she'll call someone, but she never does. You think you can take a look?" Lucas wiped his hands on a towel and walked over. The door was indeed sticking. The bottom hinge had come loose, and the metal was warped from years of use. He crouched down and examined it, then looked around for tools. "You got a screwdriver?" he asked. Marco handed him one from a drawer. Lucas tightened the hinge, then used a rubber mallet he found under the sink to gently tap the warped metal back into shape. It wasn't a perfect fix, but when he tested the door, it swung smoothly. "Not bad?" Marco said, impressed. Victoria appeared in the doorway, arms crossed. "What's going on?" "Lucas fixed the cooler door, Marco said. She looked at the door, then at Lucas. "You know how to fix things?" "I used to build computers," Lucas said. "Mechanical stuff isn't that different." Victoria's expression didn't change, but something flickered in her eyes. "What else can you fix?" "Depends on what's broken." She led him around the kitchen, pointing out problems. A stove burner that wouldn't light, a coffee maker that leaked, a freezer that ran too warm. Lucas examined each one, mentally cataloging what he'd need to repair them. "I can fix most of this," he said, "but I'll need parts and time." "Make a list," Victoria said. "I'll get you what you need." "You sure?" "I'm supposed to be washing dishes." "Not, you're supposed to be doing whatever keeps this place running," Victoria interrupted. "If that means fixing broken equipment, then that's what you do. Just don't let it interfere with your regular shifts." "Yes, ma'am." She gave him a look. "Don't call me ma'am. It makes me feel old." "What should I call you?" "Victoria works fine." She turned to leave, then paused. "And Lucas?" "Good work today. Keep it up." The days blurred together. Lucas woke before dawn, worked until mid-afternoon, then picked up Mia from the neighbor who'd agreed to watch her for cheap. He'd spend the evenings playing with her in the tiny apartment, reading her the same 3 books over and over until she fell asleep, and then he'd collapse into bed himself. It was exhausting. It was relentless, but it was stable, and stability was something Lucas hadn't had in a long time. He started fixing things in his spare time: the stove burner, the coffee maker, the freezer. Victoria gave him a small budget for parts, and he stretched it as far as he could, ordering off-brand replacements and learning how to improvise when something wasn't available. Marco noticed. "You're good at this," he said one afternoon, watching Lucas rewire an outlet that had been sparking. "I like solving problems," Lucas replied. "Yeah, but you're not just solving them. You're making things better." Marco gestured around the kitchen. "This place has been falling apart for years. Victoria tries, but she's only one person. Having someone who actually knows what they're doing, it makes a difference." Lucas felt a small glow of pride. It had been a long time since anyone had said he was good at something. Victoria started giving him more responsibility. She let him open the cafe some mornings, trusting him with the keys and the cash register. She asked his opinion on menu changes, on supplier orders, on whether they should repaint the dining room. And slowly, almost without realizing it, Lucas began to feel like he belonged. But there were still moments when he caught Victoria staring at nothing, her expression distant and haunted. Moments when she'd disappear into the back office for hours and come out looking exhausted. Moments when he'd hear her on the phone, her voice low and tense, talking to someone in a language he didn't understand. She was hiding something. Lucas was sure of it, but he didn't know what, and he didn't feel like he had the right to ask. 3 weeks in, the espresso machine died. It happened during the morning rush, a loud grinding noise followed by a cloud of steam and the smell of burning electronics. Victoria swore under her breath and flipped the power switch, but the machine was dead. "Damn it," she muttered. That's the third time this year. Let me take a look, Lucas said. He pulled the machine away from the wall and opened the back panel. The problem was immediately obvious. The heating element had burned out, and the wiring was fried. It wasn't fixable, not without replacing half the components. And even then, it wouldn't last long. It's done, Lucas said. You need a new one. Victoria rubbed her face. How much? A decent commercial machine? Probably $3,000, minimum. Christ. She looked at the line of customers waiting for their morning coffee, then at the dead machine, then at Lucas. Can you rig something temporary just to get us through today? Maybe, but it's going to be ugly. I don't care if it's ugly, I care if it works. Lucas spent the next hour cannibalizing parts from the broken machine and a spare coffee maker he found in storage. It was a Frankenstein creation held together with duct tape and wire nuts, but when he plugged it in and flipped the switch, hot water came out. Victoria made a test espresso. It tasted fine. She looked at the machine, then at Lucas, and laughed. A real, genuine laugh that transformed her entire face. You're a miracle worker, she said. I'm a guy with too much time on YouTube, Lucas replied, but he was smiling. Seriously, thank you. She paused. I don't say that enough, but you've been really good for this place. It's just a job. No, Victoria said quietly. It's not. Their eyes met, and for a moment something passed between them. A connection, fragile and uncertain. Then Victoria's phone rang, and the moment broke. She glanced at the screen, and her expression shuddered. I have to take this. She disappeared into the office, and Lucas went back to work. But he couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted, that they were standing on the edge of something neither of them was ready for. Bumkes. That night, Lucas was upstairs putting Mia to bed when he heard raised voices from below. He cracked the window and could just make out Victoria's voice, sharp and angry, coming from the alley behind the café. Told you I'm not interested. I don't care what the offer is. A man's voice, low and insistent. Lucas couldn't make out the words. Because this place isn't for sale, Victoria snapped. How many times do I have to say it? More murmuring. I don't care about the money. Leave me alone. The sound of a car door slamming, then an engine starting. Lucas watched from the window as a black sedan pulled away, its taillights disappearing into the fog. Victoria stood in the alley for a long time, her arms wrapped around herself, staring at nothing. Lucas wanted to go down there, to ask if she was okay, but he stayed where he was because he knew what it was like to need to be alone with your ghosts. Eventually, Victoria went back inside. Lucas heard the cafe door lock, then her footsteps on the stairs. She paused outside his door for just a second, long enough that he thought she might knock, but then she continued up to her own apartment on the third floor. Lucas lay in bed, listening to the ocean and the old building settling around him, and wondered what kind of person owned a cafe but turned down money. What kind of person worked 80-hour weeks for a business that barely broke even? What kind of person hired a stranger off the street and gave him a second chance without asking questions? Pause. The next morning, Victoria was back to normal. Brisk, efficient, focused. She didn't mention the confrontation in the alley, and Lucas didn't bring it up. But things were different now. He caught her watching him sometimes, when she thought he wasn't looking. And he found himself watching her too, noticing things he hadn't before. The way she always poured coffee for elderly customers before they asked. The way she knew everyone's name and their usual order. The way she worked herself to exhaustion but never complained. Marco noticed too. You two got a thing? He asked one afternoon while they were prepping for dinner service. What? No, Uh-huh. Marco grinned. Sure, I'm serious. She's my boss. And? Doesn't mean you're blind. Lucas didn't have an answer for that. Because the truth was, he wasn't blind. Victoria was beautiful in a way that had nothing to do with makeup or fancy clothes. Beautiful in her competence, her strength, her refusal to quit even when things were hard. But she was also his boss. And he was barely keeping his life together. He had no business thinking about her as anything other than the person who'd given him a job. So he didn't. Or at least, he tried not to. 4 weeks after Lucas started, the cafe's freezer finally gave up. It was old, older than Marco, older than the building itself probably, and it died with a pathetic wheeze and a pool of water spreading across the kitchen floor. Victoria stared at the pudding of melted ice cream and spoiled food, and for the first time since Lucas had met her, she looked defeated. "How much?" she asked quietly. Lucas had already looked up prices. "New commercial freezer? $5,000, maybe 6. Used, if we can find one, maybe 3. I don't have $3,000 sitting around." "What about a loan?" Victoria laughed bitterly. "Yeah, I'll just walk into a bank and ask for money. I'm sure that'll go great." There was something in her voice, a weight, a history. Lucas wanted to ask, but before he could, Victoria's phone rang again. She looked at the screen, and her face went pale. "I have to take this," she said, and walked out. Lucas spent the rest of the day cleaning up the mess and salvaging what he could. Marco helped, both of them working in grim silence. When Victoria came back an hour later, her eyes were red. "You okay?" Lucas asked. "Fine," she said shortly. Then, softer, "Sorry. Long day." "Want to talk about it?" "No." She looked at the space where the freezer had been. "We'll figure something out. We always do." But Lucas could hear the doubt in her voice, the exhaustion, the fear that this time, figuring it out might not be enough. Yes. That night, Lucas couldn't sleep. He kept thinking about Victoria's face when she looked at the broken freezer, about the man in the alley offering to buy the cafe, about all the small things that didn't add up. Finally, he gave up on sleep and went downstairs. The cafe was dark and quiet, but the office light was on. Through the half-open door, he could see Victoria sitting at her desk, surrounded by papers and receipts, her head in her hands. Lucas knocked softly. Victoria looked up, startled. "Lucas, what are you doing up?" "Couldn't sleep, you?" "Same." She gestured at the mess of papers. "Trying to figure out how to afford a new freezer without going bankrupt." Lucas stepped inside. "Can I help?" "Unless you've got $3,000 lying around, probably not." I might have an idea," Lucas said slowly, "if you're willing to hear it." Victoria leaned back in her chair. "I'm listening. On. I still have some contacts from my old job, people who owe me favors. One of them runs a restaurant supply company. I could call him, see if he's got any used equipment he's looking to offload cheap." "Why would he give you a deal?" "Because I helped him out once when his inventory system crashed. He said if I ever needed anything..." Lucas shrugged. "Worth a shot, right?" Victoria studied him for a long moment. Then she nodded. "Okay, make the call." Lucas pulled out his phone and scrolled through his contacts. It was late, but Dave had always been a night owl. Sure enough, he picked up on the third ring. "Lucas Hayes." Dave's voice boomed through the speaker. "I thought you fell off the face of the earth." "Just taking some time away," Lucas said. "Listen, I need a favor." 10 minutes later, he had a promise of a used freezer for $1,500, delivered within the week. Victoria stared at him. "How did you do that?" "I told you, he owed me." "That's more than a favor, Lucas. That's..." She trailed off, then shook her head. "Thank you." "You gave me a job when I had nothing," Lucas said. "This is the least I can do." They sat in silence for a moment, the office quiet except for the hum of the refrigerator and the distant sound of waves. "Can I ask you something?" Victoria said finally. "Sure." "Why'd you really come here, to this town, I mean? You could have gone anywhere." Lucas thought about lying, about giving her the sanitized version of his life. But something about the way she was looking at him, tired and honest and a little bit broken, made him tell the truth. "I ran out of road," he said. "After Sarah left, after the job fell through, I just started driving. I had this idea that if I kept moving, I could outrun it. The failure, the shame, all of it." He paused. "I made it as far as this town before I realized I couldn't run anymore, so I stopped. And there you were." Victoria nodded slowly. "I get that. The running thing. Yeah?" "Yeah." She looked down at her hands. "I've been running too, just in place." "From what?" She didn't answer right away, When she finally spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. From the person I used to be. From the life I had before this. She met his eyes. You asked earlier why I work here instead of hiring someone. Truth is, I need to. This place, this work, it's the only thing that keeps me from disappearing into everything else. Lucas wanted to ask what everything else meant, but he could see in her face that she wasn't ready to explain. Not yet. Well, he said gently, for what it's worth, I'm glad you were here when I stopped running. Victoria smiled, sad and small, but real. Me too. They talked for another hour, about nothing and everything. About Mia's love of seashells, about Marco's terrible jokes, about the regulars who came in every morning and ordered the same thing every single time. It was easy, Lucas realized, talking to her, being with her, and that was dangerous. Because the last time he'd let himself feel this way about someone, it had ended with divorce papers and a custody battle he'd barely survived. But he couldn't seem to stop himself. The freezer arrived 3 days later, and Lucas spent an entire afternoon installing it. Victoria helped, handing him tools and holding parts in place while he bolted things together. They worked well as a team, he noticed. She anticipated what he needed before he asked, and he did the same for her. When they finally got it running, Victoria let out a whoop of triumph and hugged him without thinking. Lucas froze for just a second, then hugged her back. She was warm and solid, and she smelled like coffee and vanilla, and for a moment he let himself imagine that this was his life, that this café, this woman, this strange little town by the sea, that all of it was real and permanent and his. Then Victoria pulled away, flustered. Sorry, we did it. Yeah, Lucas said, his voice rougher than he intended. We did. Their eyes met, and the air between them felt charged with something Lucas didn't have a name for. Want, maybe, or possibility, or just the simple human need to not be alone. Victoria looked away first. I should get back to work. Right, yeah. She left the kitchen, and Lucas stood there, his heart pounding, wondering what the hell he was doing. That night, after Mia was asleep, Lucas sat at the window and looked out at the ocean. The town was quiet, the streets empty except for the occasional car passing through. He thought about Victoria's warning on his first day, that this place would break people who couldn't handle the truth. He still didn't know what she'd meant. But he was starting to suspect that the truth had less to do with the café and more to do with the woman who ran it, and maybe with himself. Because the truth was, he was falling for her. Slowly, terrifyingly, inevitably, and he had no idea what to do about it. His phone buzzed. A text from Victoria. Thanks again for today. Couldn't have done it without you. Lucas typed back. Any time. Then he added, I mean it. Any time. He watched the 3 dots appear and disappear, appear and disappear. Finally, her response came through. I know, that's what scares me. Lucas stared at the message for a long time. Then he turned off his phone and went to bed, knowing that sleep wouldn't come easy, because he knew exactly what she meant. The text message sat in Lucas's phone like a splinter he couldn't dig out. That's what scares me. He read it 17 times before finally putting the phone face down on the nightstand and forcing himself to close his eyes. The next morning, Victoria acted like nothing had happened. She was already downstairs when Lucas arrived at 4:55, pulling espresso shots for the early crowd of fishermen who came in before heading out to sea. She nodded at him when he walked in, the same brisk acknowledgement she gave him every morning, and went back to work. Lucas tied on his apron and went to the kitchen. Marco was already there, cracking eggs into a steel bowl with one hand while flipping bacon with the other. You look like hell, Marco said without looking up. Didn't sleep much. Yeah, I gathered that from the bags under your eyes. Marco pointed his spatula toward the dishwasher. Jimmy called in sick again. You're going to be drowning today. He wasn't wrong. By 7 a.m., Lucas was 3 loads behind and the dishes were piling up faster than he could wash them. His hands were raw from the hot water, and his shoulder was starting to scream from the repetitive motion, but he kept going. He'd learned a long time ago that the only way through was through. Victoria came back during a lull, carrying 2 plates of scrambled eggs and toast. Eat, she said, setting one in front of him. I'm fine. You haven't eaten since yesterday. Eat. Lucas wanted to argue, but his stomach betrayed him with a loud growl. Victoria raised an eyebrow, and he gave in. They ate standing up at the prep counter, not talking, just refueling. The eggs were perfect, fluffy, seasoned with something that tasted like thyme and black pepper. The toast was crispy on the outside, soft in the middle. "These are really good," Lucas said. "Marco's recipe. He won't tell anyone what he puts in them." Victoria took a bite of her own eggs, then set down her fork. "About last night, you don't have to explain. I want to." She looked at him directly, and Lucas saw something vulnerable in her expression. "I meant what I said. You scare me. Not because of anything you've done, but because—" She paused, searching for words. "Because I haven't let myself care about anything except this cafe in a very long time. And now I'm starting to care about you, and I don't know what to do with that." Well, Lucas's heart was doing something complicated in his chest. "I don't know what to do with it either." "So what do we do?" "I don't know." He set down his own fork. "Maybe we just see what happens?" Victoria smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "That's terrifying." "Yeah, it really is." They stood there for a moment, caught between honesty and fear, and then the bell above the front door chimed, and the moment dissolved. Victoria went back out front, and Lucas went back to his dishes, and neither of them acknowledged that something fundamental had just shifted between them. The day dragged on. Lucas worked through lunch, then stayed late to fix a leaking pipe under the sink. By the time he finished, it was almost 6, and the cafe was empty except for Victoria, who was wiping down tables with methodical precision. "You don't have to stay," she said. "I know, I wanted to finish the pipe." "You did. Thank you." She wrung out the rag in the bucket at her feet. "Can I ask you something?" "Sure." "What was your wife like?" The question caught Lucas off guard. He leaned against the counter, considering how to answer. "Smart. Ambitious. She wanted things I couldn't give her." "Like what?" "Stability. Success. A husband who wasn't constantly chasing the next big idea that never panned out." He rubbed the back of his neck. "I thought I was building something. A career. A future. Turns out I was just spinning my wheels while she waited for me to grow up." "That doesn't sound fair to you." "Maybe not. But she wasn't wrong either." Lucas looked down at his hand, still red and raw from the dishwater. "I put everything into that startup. Worked 90-hour weeks, maxed out credit cards, convinced myself that if I just worked hard enough, it would all pay off. And then it didn't. The company folded, and Sarah was gone before the final paycheck cleared. Victoria set down her rag and came to stand next to him. "You know that's not failure, right? Trying something and having it not work out, that's just life." "Tell that to my bank account." "I'm serious, Lucas. You didn't fail. You took a risk. It didn't pan out. But you're still here. You're still fighting. That's not failure. That's survival." Lucas looked at her, at the fierce certainty in her eyes, and felt something loosen in his chest. "How do you do that?" "Do what?" "Make everything sound so simple." Victoria laughed, short and sharp. "Trust me, nothing about my life is simple." "Then tell me about it." Her expression shuddered. "Not yet." "Why not?" "Because once I tell you, you'll look at me differently, and I'm not ready for that." She picked up her rag and went back to wiping tables. "Give me time." Lucas wanted to push, wanted to demand answers to all the questions that had been building since his first day. But he remembered what it felt like to have someone push him when he wasn't ready to talk, so he let it go. "Okay," he said, "but when you are ready, I'm here." Victoria paused mid-wipe, her back to him. "I know." Lucas left her there and went upstairs to check on Mia. The neighbor, Mrs. Chen, was reading her a story about a bear who couldn't find his hat. Mia was enthralled, her eyes wide and focused on the pictures. "She's been good as gold," Mrs. Chen said, closing the book. "Ate all her dinner, brushed her teeth. No fussing." "Thank you. I really appreciate it." "It's no trouble. She's a sweet girl." Mrs. Chen gathered her things and headed for the door, then paused. "That boss of yours, Victoria, she's good people. Don't let her fool you with all that tough talk." "I won't." After Mrs. Chen left, Lucas lay down on the bed with Mia curled against his side. She smelled like strawberry shampoo and graham crackers. "Daddy?" she said sleepily. "Yeah, baby?" "Are we staying here, in this place?" "For now. Why?" "Because I like it. The ocean is pretty. And Miss Victoria is nice." Lucas stroked her hair. "Yeah, she is. Do you like her?" The question was innocent, the way only a 4-year-old's question could be. But it hit Lucas like a punch to the gut. "Yeah," he said quietly. "I do." "Good," Mia said, already half asleep. "Mommy was mean sometimes." "Miss Victoria isn't mean." Lucas didn't know what to say to that. So he just held his daughter and listened to her breathing even out and tried not to think about how much he wanted the life they were building here to be real. The following week, the man from the alley came back. Lucas was out front, refilling napkin dispensers, when a black sedan pulled up to the curb. The same one he'd seen that night. A man got out, tall, expensive suit, the kind of watch that cost more than Lucas made in 6 months. He walked into the cafe like he owned the place, looked around with thinly veiled disdain, and went straight to the counter where Victoria was ringing up a customer. "We need to talk," the man said. Victoria didn't even look at him. "No, we don't?" "Mos Basket." "Victoria, be reasonable." "I said no, Richard." Her voice was flat and hard. "Now leave." Richard glanced around the cafe, clearly aware that people were watching. He lowered his voice, but Lucas was close enough to hear. "You can't hide here forever. Eventually, you're going to have to deal with reality." "This is my reality," Victoria said, "and you're not part of it. Your father—" "My father is dead." The words came out like bullets. "You don't get to use him to manipulate me anymore." Richard's jaw tightened. The estate won't settle itself. The lawyers need answers. The board needs decisions. You have responsibilities. "I don't have anything," Victoria said. "I walked away. That means you deal with it." "You can't just walk away from billions of dollars." The word hung in the air like a grenade. Lucas felt his entire understanding of the situation shift and realign. Billions. Not thousands. Not millions. Billions. Victoria finally looked at Richard, and her expression was cold enough to freeze oceans. "Watch me." Richard stood there for another moment, clearly weighing his options. Then he pulled a business card from his pocket and set it on the counter. "When you're done playing house, call me. We'll fix this mess you've made." He turned and walked out without another word. The sedan pulled away, and the cafe slowly returned to its normal hum of conversation. But everyone was stealing glances at Victoria, whispering behind their hands. Victoria picked up the business card, tore it in half, and dropped it in the trash. Then she went back to work like nothing had happened. Lucas stood there, napkin dispenser in hand, trying to process what he'd just learned. Victoria wasn't just some woman who owned a cafe. She was, what, an heiress? A runaway billionaire? And she'd been working alongside him, washing dishes and mopping floors and acting like money didn't exist. No wonder she'd warned him that things would get complicated. He wanted to go talk to her, to ask her what the hell was going on. But before he could move, Marco appeared at his elbow. "Don't," Marco said quietly. "Don't what?" "Don't go asking her questions. Not right now. She'll tell you when she's ready." "You knew?" Marco shrugged. "I had my suspicions. But it doesn't matter, does it? She's still the same person." "Is she?" "Yeah, Marco said firmly. "She is. Whatever she had before, she gave it up to be here." "That tells you everything you need to know." Lucas wanted to believe that, but the word billions kept echoing in his head, and he couldn't shake the feeling that he'd been living in a story he didn't understand. That night, Victoria knocked on his door. Lucas had been expecting it, but it still made his heart jump. He opened the door to find her standing in the hallway, arms wrapped around herself, looking smaller than he'd ever seen her. "Can I come in?" she asked. "Of course." She stepped inside and looked around, at the tiny apartment, the cheap furniture, Mia asleep in the corner. "You deserve an explanation." "You don't owe me anything." "Yes, I do." Victoria sat down on the edge of the bed, and Lucas sat beside her. "My father was Christopher Hale. You probably don't recognize the name, but he owned half the commercial real estate on the East Coast. When he died 2 years ago, he left everything to me. The company, the properties, the investments, all of it. Why'd you leave? Because I was drowning. Her voice was quiet, barely above a whisper. My whole life, I was groomed to take over. Private schools, Ivy League education, internships at the company every summer. I did everything right, everything he wanted. And when he died, I stepped into his role like I was supposed to. I ran the company. I made the decisions. I played the part. She paused. And I hated every second of it. So you left. Oh, I ran, Victoria corrected. I didn't tell anyone. I just got in my car one day and drove until I couldn't drive anymore. Ended up here. Bought the cafe with cash because it was small and quiet and nobody knew who I was. Started over. Lucas was quiet for a moment, absorbing this. Does anyone know where you are? Bambo. Richard does. He's my father's former business partner. He's been trying to drag me back for 2 years now, but I signed everything over to a trust before I left. He can run the company without me. He just doesn't want to. Why not? Because without me, he doesn't have control. The board answers to the trust, not to him. And he hates that. Victoria looked at Lucas, and her eyes were tired. I know this sounds insane. I know you probably think I'm some spoiled rich girl playing at being normal. I don't think that. You should. It's partially true. She laughed bitterly. I have more money than I could spend in 10 lifetimes, and I'm here washing dishes and worrying about a broken freezer. It's ridiculous. It's not ridiculous, Lucas said. You wanted a different life, so you made one. But it's not real, is it? This whole thing, the cafe, the town, pretending to be someone I'm not. It's all just a fantasy. Is it? Lucas turned to face her fully. You show up every day. You work. You care about the people here. That's as real as it gets. Victoria's eyes were bright with unshed tears. I'm so tired of lying. Then stop. I can't. If people knew who I really was, they'd still show up for coffee, Lucas interrupted, because they don't come here for whoever you used to be. They come here for who you are now. Victoria looked at him for a long moment, and then something broke. She started crying, not the delicate, photogenic kind of crying, but the raw, ugly kind that came from somewhere deep and wounded. Lucas didn't hesitate. He pulled her into his arms and held her while she sobbed into his shoulder, her whole body shaking. I'm sorry, she gasped between sobs. I'm so sorry. For what? For lying to you, for dragging you into this mess, for being so broken I don't even know how to be a normal person anymore. Lucas tightened his arms around her. Victoria, listen to me. You gave me a job when I had nothing. You gave me a place to live, a chance to start over, a reason to believe I wasn't completely worthless. You don't get to apologize for that. But I should have told you. Maybe, but I get why you didn't. He pulled back just enough to look at her face. And for what it's worth, I don't care how much money you have. I care about the person who makes terrible coffee at 5 a.m. and knows every customer's name and works herself into the ground because she actually gives a damn. That's the person I... He stopped himself just in time. Victoria's eyes searched his face. The person you what? Lucas knew he was standing on the edge of something he couldn't take back, but he was so tired of being afraid. The person I'm falling for, he said quietly. Victoria's breath caught. For a moment, neither of them moved. Then she leaned forward and kissed him. It wasn't graceful or cinematic. It was desperate and a little clumsy and tasted like salt from her tears. But it was real, more real than anything Lucas had felt in years. When they finally pulled apart, Victoria was still crying, but she was also smiling. This is a terrible idea, she said. Probably the worst, Lucas agreed. We barely know each other. True. And I'm your boss. Also true. And I'm a complete disaster. Lucas brushed a strand of hair away from her face. So am I. Victoria laughed, and it was the most beautiful sound Lucas had ever heard. Then her expression turned serious. I don't know how to do this. Be with someone, I mean. I've spent so long being alone. We'll figure it out, Lucas said. Together. She kissed him again, slower this time, and Lucas felt the last of his defenses crumble. He'd spent so long being broken, being angry, being afraid. But here, in this tiny apartment above a failing cafe, with a woman who was just as broken as he was. Here, he felt whole. They stayed like that for a long time, holding each other in the dark, neither of them ready to let go. Eventually, Victoria pulled away. I should go. Mia is asleep, has been for hours. Still, Victoria stood up and Lucas stood with her. Thank you for listening, for not running. Where would I go? She smiled. Nowhere, I hope. She kissed him one more time, soft and brief, then headed for the door. Before she left, she turned back. Lucas? Yeah? I meant what I said. You scare me, but in a good way. Same. After she left, Lucas stood in the middle of his apartment, heart pounding, and wondered what the hell he'd just gotten himself into. The next morning, everything was different and nothing had changed. Victoria was already downstairs when Lucas arrived, same as always. But when she handed him his coffee, their fingers brushed and she smiled, quick and private, just for him. It was a small thing, but it felt monumental. Marco noticed immediately. Something happened? No, Lucas said too quickly. Uh-huh, Marco grinned. You're a terrible liar. Lucas ignored him and went to work. But he couldn't stop smiling. Even when the dishwasher broke down again and he had to spend 2 hours elbow deep in greasy water, he couldn't stop smiling. Things were good, better than good. For the first time since Sarah left, Lucas felt like he was building something real, something that mattered. And then, 3 days later, everything fell apart. It started with a phone call. Lucas was in the kitchen fixing the temperamental oven when he heard Victoria's phone ring. He didn't think anything of it until he heard her voice through the office door, sharp and frightened. What? When? A pause. Is she... Another pause, longer this time. I'll be there as soon as I can. The office door slammed open and Victoria came out, her face pale. She looked around wildly, spotted Marco and grabbed his arm. I have to leave now, She stopped, took a breath. There's a family emergency. I don't know when I'll be back. What happened? Marco asked. I don't have time to explain. Lucas. She turned to him, and he saw real fear in her eyes. I need you to run the cafe while I'm gone. Can you do that? Yeah, of course, but Victoria's, Yeah, of course, but I have to go. She was already moving toward the door, grabbing her purse and keys from behind the counter. Marco knows the suppliers. The register combination is in the office. Just keep everything running, please. I will. She paused at the door, looked back at him one more time, and then she was gone. Lucas stood there, surrounded by dirty dishes and half-cooked orders, and felt the weight of responsibility settle onto his shoulders like a physical thing. Marco clapped him on the back. Well, boss, what's the plan? Lucas looked around the cafe, at the customers waiting for their food, at the coffee machine that was making a concerning grinding noise, at the world Victoria had built, and then left in his hands. We keep the doors open, he said, no matter what. The first day was chaos. Lucas had never run a restaurant before. He'd never managed a staff or dealt with suppliers or handled customer complaints. But he learned fast, because he had no choice. The coffee machine broke down before noon. Lucas fixed it with zip ties and prayer. A pipe burst in the bathroom. He called a plumber he couldn't afford and put it on the cafe's credit card, hoping Victoria wouldn't mind. They ran out of bacon during the lunch rush. Marco sent Lucas to the grocery store with petty cash and a list, and Lucas came back with everything they needed, plus a few things they didn't, because he didn't know what half the items on Marco's list actually were. It was exhausting. It was overwhelming. It was the hardest Lucas had worked in his entire life. But he didn't quit. He stayed until midnight, balancing the register and doing inventory and making sure everything was ready for the next day. Then he dragged himself upstairs, kissed Mia goodnight, and collapsed into bed fully clothed. The second day was worse. One of the waitresses called in sick. The health inspector showed up for a surprise visit and found 3 minor violations Lucas didn't even know existed. A regular customer complained that his eggs were overcooked and demanded his money back. Lucas gave it to him, even though the eggs looked fine, because he was too tired to argue. By the third day, Lucas was running on fumes and spite. His hands were covered in burns and cuts from equipment he was still learning how to use. His back ached from carrying bags of flour and crates of produce. He'd slept maybe 12 hours total since Victoria left. But the cafe was still open. The customers kept coming. The food kept going out. Marco watched him with something that looked like respect. You're tougher than you look. I don't feel tough, Lucas said, gulping down his fourth coffee of the day. I feel like I'm dying. Yeah, well, you're not dying. You're surviving. There's a difference. Well, Lucas wanted to argue, but he was too tired. He just nodded and went back to work. On the fourth day, Mrs. Chen cornered him during a rare quiet moment. Where's Victoria? Family emergency? Lucas said because he didn't know what else to say. She coming back? I don't know, Xiao. Mrs. Chen studied him with sharp eyes. You doing okay? I'm managing. That's not what I asked. Lucas set down the tray he'd been carrying. Honestly, I have no idea what I'm doing. I'm just trying to keep everything from falling apart until she gets back. Seems to me you're doing more than that, Mrs. Chen said. This place hasn't run this smooth in months. That can't be true. It is. Victoria works hard, but she spreads herself too thin. You're focused, organized. The staff actually knows what they're supposed to be doing for once. She patted his arm. You're good at this. Lucas didn't feel good at it. He felt like he was drowning. But he nodded anyway, because arguing with Mrs. Chen was pointless. That night, Victoria called. Lucas was in the office trying to decipher her handwriting on an order form when his phone rang. Lucas? Her voice sounded small and distant. Hey, you okay? Not really. He heard her take a shaky breath. How's the cafe? Still standing. We had some hiccups, but we're managing. What kind of hiccups? Lucas thought about lying. About telling her everything was perfect so she wouldn't worry. But he'd promised himself he wouldn't lie to her. The coffee machine broke. I fixed it. The bathroom pipe burst. I called a plumber. The health inspector found some violations. I fixed those too. We ran out of supplies twice. I figured it out. He paused. It's been rough, but we're okay. There was silence on the other end of the line. Then, thank you. You don't have to thank me. Yes, I do. You could have called me. Could have asked for help, but you handled it. What else was I supposed to do? Let it fail? Some people would have. Lucas leaned back in the chair. I'm not some people. Victoria laughed, but it sounded like crying. No, you're really not. Victoria, what happened? Where are you? Another long pause. Boston. My aunt, she's sick, really sick. I'm dealing with doctors and lawyers and family members I haven't spoken to in years. It's a nightmare. Do you need me to do anything? You're already doing it. Just keep the cafe running. I'll be back as soon as I can. Take your time. We've got this. Lucas, her voice broke. I'm sorry for leaving you with all this, for not being there. Don't apologize. Family comes first. She stopped, started again. You're important too. Lucas's chest felt tight. So are you. They stayed on the phone for another few minutes, not saying much, just breathing together across the distance. When they finally hung up, Lucas sat in the quiet office and let himself feel everything he'd been pushing down for days. The exhaustion, the fear, the desperate need to prove he was worth the faith Victoria had placed in him. Then he stood up, straightened his shoulders, and went back to work. The days blurred into weeks. Lucas stopped counting after the first 7, stopped marking time in anything except coffee pots brewed and plates washed, and hours until he could collapse into bed. Victoria called every few nights, her voice getting thinner and more strained each time. And Lucas told her the same thing he always did. Everything was fine. Don't worry. Take care of your family. He didn't tell her about the supplier who tried to overcharge them by 40%, or how Lucas had threatened to find someone else until the guy backed down. He didn't mention the grease fire in the kitchen that Marco put out with a fire extinguisher while Lucas kept the customers calm by offering free desserts. He definitely didn't tell her about the night he found himself sitting on the floor of the walk-in cooler at 2 a.m, too exhausted to move, wondering if he was actually capable of keeping this promise he'd made. But he kept going, because what else was there to do? Mia noticed the change in him. She started drawing pictures during the day with Mrs. Chen. Crayon sketches of the cafe, of the ocean, of a stick figure daddy who looked tired. One night she climbed into his lap while he was going over invoices and put her small hand on his cheek. You're sad, she said. Just tired, baby. You miss Miss Victoria. Lucas set down his pen. Yeah, I do. Is she coming back? I hope so. Mia was quiet for a moment, then said, Mommy didn't come back. The words hit Lucas like a fist to the stomach. He pulled Mia closer, breathing in the smell of her strawberry shampoo, trying to find the right thing to say. Miss Victoria is different from Mommy. How? She keeps her promises. Lucas hoped to hell that was true. On the 15th day, Richard showed up again. Lucas was out front, showing a new waitress how to work the espresso machine when the black sedan pulled up. Richard stepped out wearing a different expensive suit, but the same expression of vague contempt. Where's Victoria? He demanded. Not here, Lucas said. I can see that. Where is she? Family emergency. She'll be back when she's back. Richard's eyes narrowed. You're the dishwasher. I'm the guy running this place while she's gone. Can I help you with something? Yes. You can tell me where Victoria is. I've been calling for 2 weeks and she won't answer. Maybe that's your answer, Lucas said flatly. Richard took a step closer, and Lucas could smell his cologne, something expensive and aggressive. Listen carefully. I don't know what game Victoria is playing, but she has responsibilities. Real responsibilities. Not this. He gestured around the cafe with obvious disdain. Fantasy life she's built here. She needs to come home and deal with her obligations. Her obligations? Lucas repeated. You mean the company she signed over to a trust before she left? That trust is a legal nightmare that's costing us millions in delayed projects and missed opportunities. The board is getting restless. Her family is furious. This whole situation is untenable. Sounds like a you problem. Richard's face flushed red. You have no idea what you're talking about. Victoria isn't some ordinary person. She's the Hale heir. She has a duty. She has a life, Lucas interrupted. One she chose. And you showing up here trying to drag her back to one she didn't want isn't going to change that. And who are you to speak for her? Her employee? Her... what? Her boyfriend? Richard laughed, sharp and cruel. You're nobody. A failed tech worker washing dishes in a tourist trap. You think you matter to someone like Victoria? Lucas felt something cold settle in his chest. I think Victoria makes her own decisions, and I think you're not welcome here. This isn't over. Yeah, it is. Get out. Richard stared at him for a long moment, clearly weighing whether to push further. Then he pulled out another business card and set it on the counter. When she comes back, give her this. Tell her the family wants to talk. Civilized conversation. No pressure. I'll tell her you stopped by, Lucas said. What she does with that information is up to her. Richard left without another word. Lucas picked up the business card, walked to the back alley, and dropped it in the dumpster. Marco appeared beside him, wiping his hands on a towel. That guy's a piece of work. Yeah. You handled it well. Did I? Lucas leaned against the brick wall, suddenly exhausted. Or did I just make things worse? Hard to make things worse than they already are, Marco said. Victoria's been running from that life for 2 years. Guy like that showing up, trying to drag her back, that's not new. How do you know, Paul? Because I've been here since she bought the place. I've seen him come around before. Seen other people too. Lawyers, family members, business partners. They all say the same thing. She needs to come home. She's being irresponsible. She's throwing her life away. Marco shook his head. But she never goes. No matter how much they push. Lucas absorbed this. Why'd she hire you? Back when she first opened. Chos. Same reason she hired you. I needed work. She needed help. And she doesn't ask questions about who you used to be. Marco smiled slightly. I was a head chef at a 5-star restaurant in New York before I came here. Had a drinking problem. Lost everything. Ended up in this town with nothing but the clothes on my back and a set of kitchen knives. Victoria gave me a chance when nobody else would. She's good at that. Yeah, she is. That's why we protect her. Marco met Lucas's eyes. Even when she's not here. Lucas nodded slowly. Even when she's not here. They went back inside, and Lucas threw himself into work with renewed determination. If Victoria had built this place as a refuge for people who needed a second chance, then he'd be damned if he let anyone take it from her. That night, Lucas was doing inventory in the stockroom when his phone rang. Victoria. He answered immediately. Hey, wo ish. Ni isetsuba spa. Hey, her voice sounded rough, like she'd been crying. How are you holding up? I'm fine. How are you? Lying to each other isn't a great foundation for whatever this is between us, Victoria said. Lucas laughed despite himself. Okay, I'm exhausted and I miss you, and Richard showed up today trying to start trouble. What did he want? You. He said the family wants to talk. Civilized conversation, no pressure. His words, not mine. Victoria was quiet for a long moment. What did you tell him? That you'd be back when you're back, and that he should leave you alone. How'd he take that? About as well as you'd expect. Lucas sat down on a crate of canned tomatoes. He called me a nobody, said I was a failed tech worker washing dishes in a tourist trap. He's an asshole. Yeah, but he's not wrong, is he? I am washing dishes. I did fail. Lucas, I'm not looking for pity, Lucas said quickly. I keep thinking about what he said, about me being nobody. And the thing is, 2 months ago, he would have been right. I was nobody. I had nothing. But now I'm here, running your cafe, keeping everything together, and I don't feel like nobody anymore. I feel like I'm doing something that matters. He heard Victoria's breath catch. You are. You're keeping my whole world from falling apart. That's a lot of pressure. I know. I'm sorry. Stop apologizing, Lucas said. I'm not complaining. I'm just telling you how I feel. Then tell me this. Do you want me to come back? The question hung in the air between them. Lucas thought about the cafe, about the work, about the life he'd been building here. But mostly, he thought about Victoria, about the way she smiled when she thought nobody was watching, about the feel of her in his arms, about the possibility of something real between them. Yes, he said simply. I want you to come back. Even though it's complicated, especially because it's complicated. Victoria laughed, and it sounded less broken than before. I'll be home soon. My aunt is stable now. The lawyers are handling the estate. I just need to tie up a few more things. Take your time, we're managing. Lucas? Yeah? Thank you. For everything. For staying. For caring. For being you. You're welcome. After they hung up, Lucas sat in the stockroom for a while, surrounded by cans and boxes and the smell of flour, and let himself imagine what it would be like when Victoria came home, the conversations they'd have, the decisions they'd make, the future they might build together. He was still thinking about it when he heard shouting from the front of the cafe. Lucas ran out to find 2 customers arguing loudly over a spilled drink. One was a regular, an older man named Tom who came in every morning for black coffee and a bagel. The other was a tourist, red-faced and angry. You spilled your drink on me, the tourist was yelling. It was an accident, Tom shot back. You did it on purpose. Why the hell would I do that? Lucas stepped between them. Hey, both of you, calm down. This man assaulted me, the tourist said. I bumped into him by accident and spilled coffee on his shirt, Tom said. I apologized. He started screaming. This shirt is designer. It's ruined. Lucas looked at the shirt. It had a small coffee stain on the sleeve, hardly ruined. But the tourist was still yelling, and other customers were starting to stare. Sir, Lucas said to the tourist, I'm sorry about your shirt. Let me comp your meal and give you some club soda to get the stain out. I don't want club soda. I want compensation. How much compensation are we talking about? $500. Lucas almost laughed. For a coffee stain? That's how much the shirt cost. Then you probably shouldn't wear a $500 shirt to a diner, Lucas said, his patience wearing thin. Look, I'll comp your meal and throw in a gift certificate for next time. That's the best I can do. That's not good enough. I want to speak to the owner. She's not here. I'm in charge. The tourist's eyes narrowed. Then I'm calling my lawyer. Go ahead, Lucas said. But you're going to have a hard time winning a lawsuit over an accidental coffee spill. Now, either accept my offer or leave. The tourist sputtered for a moment, clearly not used to being challenged. Then he threw his napkin on the table and stormed out. The cafe erupted in applause. Tom clapped Lucas on the shoulder. That was beautiful, he said. That was stupid, Lucas replied. He might actually call a lawyer. Let him. Everyone here saw what happened. Guy's just looking for a payout. Tom lowered his voice. You're doing a hell of a job, kid. Victoria's lucky to have you. Lucas wasn't sure about that, but he nodded and went back to work. The next morning, Lucas woke up to his phone ringing. It was 6 a.m., an hour past when he should have already been downstairs. He'd overslept, something he hadn't done since Victoria left. He grabbed the phone without looking at the screen. Hello? Lucas Hayes? An unfamiliar voice, official sounding. Yeah? This is Sandra Mills from Child Protective Services. I'm calling about your daughter, Mia. Lucas's blood went cold. What about her? We received a complaint that she's being left unsupervised for extended periods while you work. I'm going to need to schedule a home visit to discuss the situation. What complaint? Who called you? I'm not at liberty to say, but we take these allegations seriously. Can you come to our office this afternoon? I'm working this afternoon. Then we'll come to you, 2 p.m., at your residence. Please make sure you're there. She hung up before Lucas could respond. He sat on the edge of the bed, phone still in his hand, feeling like the floor had dropped out from under him. Someone had called CPS on him. Someone had reported him for neglect. He thought about Richard, about the tourist from yesterday, about all the people who might want to cause trouble. But none of it made sense. Mia was fine. She was happy. Mrs. Chen took excellent care of her. He wasn't neglecting her. But that didn't matter, did it? Once CPS started investigating, anything could happen. They could take Mia away, put her in foster care. He could lose the only thing in his life that mattered. Lucas forced himself to breathe, forced himself to think. He had 4 hours before the meeting, 4 hours to make sure everything was perfect, 4 hours to prove he was a good father. He called Mrs. Chen and explained the situation. She was furious. This is ridiculous, she said. I'll tell them. I'll tell them you're a wonderful father and Mia is well cared for. Thank you. Who would do this? I don't know, but I'm going to find out. Lucas spent the morning in a haze of anxiety. He cleaned the apartment until it was spotless. He made sure Mia's clothes were organized, her toys put away, her bed made. He gathered every piece of documentation he had, pay stubs, rental agreement, medical records showing Mia's regular checkups. At 1:55, there was a knock on the door. Lucas opened it to find a middle-aged woman in a business suit holding a clipboard. Mr. Hayes, I'm Sandra Mills. Come in. Sandra walked through the apartment slowly, taking notes. She checked the kitchen, the bathroom, Mia's sleeping area. She asked questions. How many hours did he work? Who watched Mia? What did they eat? When did she go to bed? Lucas answered everything honestly. He had nothing to hide. Finally, Sandra sat down at the small table and looked at him. Mr. Hayes, I'm going to be frank with you. The complaint we received alleged that your daughter is left alone for 12 to 14 hours a day, while you work excessive hours at a restaurant. That you're financially unstable and possibly homeless. That's all wrong, Lucas said. I work 6 days a week, 8 to 10 hours a day. Mia is with Mrs. Chen during that time. I'm not homeless. I rent this apartment from my employer, and I'm not financially unstable. I have steady income and savings. Can you provide proof of that? Lucas handed her the documents he'd prepared. Sandra reviewed them carefully, making more notes. And Mrs. Chen? She's a licensed childcare provider? No, she's a neighbor who helps out, but she's wonderful with Mia. You can ask her yourself. I will. Sandra set down her pen. Mr. Hayes, I'm not here to take your daughter away. I'm here to make sure she's safe and cared for. From what I can see, this appears to be a false complaint, but I still need to complete my investigation. I'll need to speak with Mrs. Chen and observe Mia in her environment. Of course, whatever you need. Yeah. Sandra stood up. I'll be in touch within the week. In the meantime, continue what you're doing. Your daughter seems happy and healthy. That's what matters. But after she left, Lucas sat on the floor and let himself shake. He'd been terrified she was going to take Mia, terrified that everything he'd built here would come crashing down. But it hadn't. Not yet. He went downstairs and found Marco in the kitchen. I need to leave early today. Can you handle closing? Marco took one look at his face and nodded. Yeah, everything okay? No, but it will be. Lucas hoped that was true. He spent the afternoon with Mia, playing on the beach and collecting shells and trying to pretend everything was normal. But his mind kept circling back to the same question. Who had called CPS? That night, after Mia was asleep, Lucas sat down and made a list of possibilities. Richard was at the top, the angry tourist second, but both felt too obvious, too direct. His phone rang. Victoria. Hey, she said, I'm coming home tomorrow. Lucas closed his eyes. Thank God. What's wrong? You sound terrible. He told her everything, the CPS complaint, the investigation, his suspicions. Victoria listened without interrupting. When he finished, she was quiet for a long moment. Then, it was Richard. How do you know? Because it's exactly the kind of thing he'd do. He can't get to me, so he goes after you, finds your weak spot and exploits it. Her voice was hard. I'm going to kill him. Victoria, I'm serious. Nobody messes with you or Mia. Nobody. Despite everything, Lucas smiled. You threatening someone on my behalf? Damn right I am. You're mine to protect now. The possessiveness in her voice sent warmth through Lucas's chest. Is that what we are? Yours and mine? I don't know what else to call it. Do you? Lucas thought about it. Boyfriend and girlfriend sounded too juvenile. Partners felt too formal. But there was something between them, something real and messy and worth fighting for. How about we figure it out when you get here, he said. Deal. He heard rustling like she was packing. Lucas? Yeah? I'm proud of you for handling everything, for protecting what we've built, for being strong enough not to run. I'm not strong. I'm just stubborn. Same thing, Victoria said. Get some sleep. I'll see you tomorrow. After she hung up, Lucas sat in the dark apartment and felt something shift inside him. For weeks, he'd been running on empty, pushing through exhaustion and doubt and fear. But Victoria was coming home, and that meant he wasn't alone anymore. Whatever came next, they'd face it together. The next day felt like it lasted a year. Lucas checked his phone every 5 minutes, waiting for Victoria's message saying she'd arrived. The cafe was busy. Some kind of local festival had brought in twice the normal crowd, and Lucas was running himself ragged trying to keep up. Around 2 p.m., the door opened and Victoria walked in. She looked tired. There were dark circles under her eyes and new lines around her mouth. Her hair was pulled back in a messy bun, and she was wearing yoga pants and a sweatshirt that had seen better days. She looked nothing like a billionaire heiress, and everything like the woman Lucas had fallen for. Their eyes met across the cafe, and everything else faded away. Lucas walked over to her, aware that everyone was watching but not caring. You're back. I'm back. They stood there for a moment, just looking at each other. Then Victoria reached out and took his hand, and Lucas felt something inside him settle. Come on, she said quietly. Let's go talk. They went up to Lucas's apartment. Victoria sat on the bed and Lucas sat beside her, their shoulders touching. I'm sorry I was gone so long, Victoria said. Don't be. You had to take care of your family. My aunt died, Victoria said quietly. 3 days ago. The funeral was yesterday. Victoria, I'm so sorry. She was the only one who understood why I left. The only one who didn't try to drag me back. Victoria's voice cracked. She told me once that money doesn't buy happiness. It just buys bigger problems. I didn't understand what she meant until I left. Lucas squeezed her hand. She sounds like she was a good person. She was. Victoria wiped her eyes. She left me something in her will. A letter. It basically said that I should stop running from my past and start building my future. That hiding isn't the same as healing. What does that mean? Victoria turned to look at him. It means I need to stop pretending I'm someone I'm not. I can't keep hiding from my family, from the company, from the money. It's all part of who I am, whether I like it or not. Lucas felt his stomach drop. Are you saying you're going back? No, I'm saying I need to deal with it. Face it head on instead of running away. She took a breath. I'm going to go to Boston next week. Meet with the lawyers, the board, the family, set clear boundaries about what I will and won't do, and then I'm coming back here for good. Basti, you're short, I'm sure. Victoria cupped his face with her hand. Because this, you, Mia, the cafe, this life, this is what I want. Not the money or the company or any of it. Just this. Lucas kissed her, slow and deep and full of everything he couldn't put into words. When they pulled apart, Victoria was smiling. I missed you, she said. I missed you too. How bad did everything fall apart while I was gone? Lucas laughed. Define fall apart. That bad? Let's just say I have a newfound respect for what you do every day. They spent the next hour catching up. Lucas told her about the grease fire, the supplier issues, the angry tourist. Victoria told him about her aunt's final days, about the family members who'd tried to use the funeral as an opportunity to pressure her, about the lawyers who'd been circling like sharks. Richard called CPS on me, Lucas said finally. Didn't he? Us. Victoria's expression hardened. Probably. I'll deal with him. How? By making it very clear that if he ever comes near you or Mia again, I'll make his life a living hell. She smiled, but it wasn't friendly. One of the benefits of being obscenely wealthy, I can afford very expensive lawyers who specialize in making problems disappear. Victoria, I'm serious, Lucas. He crossed a line, and he's going to regret it. Lucas believed her. There was steel in her voice, a hardness he hadn't heard before. This was the woman who'd walked away from billions of dollars, the woman who'd built a life from nothing, the woman who protected the people she cared about. Okay, he said, but be careful. I don't want you doing anything that'll come back to haunt you. I'm always careful. But Victoria stood up and stretched. Now show me what disaster I'm walking back into downstairs. They went down to the cafe together, hand in hand, and Lucas felt something he hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. The cafe looked different through Victoria's eyes after 3 weeks away. The tables were cleaner than she'd left them. The coffee machine had new parts she didn't recognize. The menu board had been reorganized in a way that actually made sense. Even the staff moved differently, more efficiently, more confidently. Marco grinned when he saw her. Boss is back. Looks like you didn't need me, Victoria said, but there was no bitterness in it, just observation. We needed you, Marco said. We just had a good substitute. Lucas was already behind the counter pulling an espresso shot for a customer. He worked with the kind of easy competence that came from repetition, from caring about getting it right. Victoria watched him for a moment, remembering the exhausted man who'd walked through her door 2 months ago, with nothing but a sleeping child and desperation in his eyes. He'd changed. Or maybe he'd just become himself again. That night, after closing, they sat in the empty cafe with the lights turned low and talked about everything they'd been avoiding. Victoria told him about the will, how her aunt had left her a smaller inheritance separate from the family estate, money that was hers alone with no strings attached. How the lawyers had pressured her to return and take control of the company. How her cousins had cornered her at the funeral and accused her of being selfish, of abandoning the family legacy, of wasting her potential on a life that didn't matter. What did you say? Lucas asked. I told them this life matters more to me than anything they could offer. Victoria traced the rim of her coffee cup. And I meant it, but they're not going to stop. Lucas, they're going to keep coming, keep pushing, and Richard, he's going to keep trying to force my hand. So what are you going to do? And I'm going to Boston, like I said. I'm going to sit down with every single person who has an opinion about my life. And I'm going to make them understand that I'm not coming back. Not to run the company, not to sit on the board, not to play the role they want me to play. She met his eyes. And then I'm going to come home. And if they don't accept that, then they don't accept it. But I'm done running. I'm done hiding. This is my life now, and I'm going to protect it. Lucas reached across the table and took her hand. We're going to protect it. The correction made Victoria's chest tight. We, not I. Like they were in this together now, for real. I'm scared, she admitted quietly. Of what? that they'll find a way to take this from me. The cafe, this town, you, that I'll wake up one day and it'll all be gone. That's not going to happen. You don't know that. You're right, Lucas said. I don't. But I know that you're the most stubborn person I've ever met. And if anyone tries to take this from you, they're going to have to go through both of us. Victoria laughed, and it came out watery. When did you get so confident? When I realized I had something worth fighting for. So, they kissed across the table, coffee cups forgotten, and Victoria felt something settle in her chest. Fear was still there. Doubt was still there. But underneath it all was something stronger. The certainty that she wasn't alone anymore. The next few days fell into a new rhythm. Victoria and Lucas worked side by side, splitting responsibilities in a way that felt natural. She handled the front of house while he managed the kitchen and repairs. They'd catch each other's eyes across the dining room and smile, small private moments that nobody else noticed. Mia noticed. She started calling Victoria Miss Vicky and asking when she'd come have dinner upstairs. The first time it happened, Victoria looked at Lucas with panic in her eyes. You don't have to, he said quickly. No, I want to. I don't know how to do this, the family thing. Neither do I, Lucas admitted. But we can figure it out. So Victoria came upstairs that night with a bottle of sparkling cider and a container of cookies from the cafe. Mia was thrilled. She showed Victoria every single one of her drawings, explained in elaborate detail the plot of her favorite cartoon, and insisted that Victoria sit next to her during dinner. Lucas made spaghetti. Nothing fancy, just pasta and jarred sauce and garlic bread. They ate at the small table by the window, Mia chattering nonstop, while Lucas and Victoria exchanged amused glances. After Mia went to bed, they sat on the floor with their backs against the couch, shoulders touching. That was nice, Victoria said. Yeah? Yeah. She leaned her head on his shoulder. I've never had this. The normal family dinner thing. My childhood was private chefs and formal dining rooms and conversations about stock portfolios. Sounds lonely. It was. Victoria was quiet for a moment. My dad used to say that comfort breeds weakness, that we had to stay sharp, stay hungry, stay focused on building the empire. Moments like tonight, he would have called them distractions. Your dad sounds like he was kind of an asshole. Victoria laughed. He was, but he was also brilliant and driven, and he built something incredible from nothing. I spent my whole life trying to be like him. And then he died, and I realized I didn't actually want any of it. The empire, the legacy, the pressure. I just wanted to be normal. You're not normal, Lucas said gently, and that's okay. Normal is overrated anyway, says the guy who's as normal as they come. I'm a single dad working as a dishwasher in a cafe owned by a billionaire. Nothing about that is normal. Victoria turned to look at him. Do you mind that I have money? Well, Lucas thought about it honestly. Sometimes, not because I care about the money itself, but because it's this huge part of your life that I don't understand. Like there's this whole world you came from that I can't relate to. Good. Good? I don't want you to relate to it, Victoria said fiercely. That world is poison. It's all about power and control and using people. You're not like that. You're real. And that's what I need. Lucas kissed her forehead. Then that's what you'll get. They stayed up late talking, and when Victoria finally went upstairs to her own apartment, Lucas lay in bed and wondered how he'd gotten so lucky. 2 months ago, he'd been drowning, and now he had a job he was good at, a woman he was falling in love with, and a future that felt possible. But the universe had a way of kicking you when you were just starting to stand up. The call from CPS came on a Thursday. Sandra Mills, the investigator, wanted to schedule a follow-up visit. Lucas agreed immediately, his stomach churning with anxiety. Victoria was in the kitchen when he hung up. What's wrong? CPS wants another visit. That's normal. They have to follow up. What if it's not normal? What if Richard did something else? What if they found some technicality? Lucas. Victoria took his face in her hands. Breathe. You're spiraling. He was. He could feel it happening, the panic rising, the worst-case scenarios multiplying in his head. He forced himself to take a breath, then another. I can't lose her, he said. You won't. I promise you won't. You can't promise that. Watch me. Victoria pulled out her phone. I'm calling my lawyer, the one who handles my personal stuff. She's the best in the state, and she's going to make absolutely sure that Richard or whoever else can't touch Mia. Victoria, you don't have to is mutat. Yes, I do. Because you matter to me, and Mia matters to me, and I'm not letting anyone hurt either of you. Lucas watched her dial, watched her pace the kitchen while she talked to someone named Patricia in clipped, efficient sentences. When she hung up, her expression was grim but determined. Patricia's going to look into it. If Richard filed a complaint, she'll find it, and if he's been harassing CPS, she'll put a stop to it. How? By making it very clear that harassment of a state agency on false pretenses is illegal and actionable. Victoria's smile was sharp. Like I said, expensive lawyers who specialize in making problems disappear. The follow-up visit happened 2 days later. Sandra Mills arrived with another social worker, a younger woman who introduced herself as Jennifer. They spent an hour observing Mia with Mrs. Chen, asking questions, reviewing documentation. Lucas stood in the corner of the apartment, trying not to look as terrified as he felt. Victoria had wanted to be there, but he'd told her no. This was his responsibility, his daughter, his problem to solve. But when Sandra and Jennifer finally sat down to deliver their verdict, Lucas wished Victoria was there to hold his hand. Mr. Hayes, Sandra said, I want to be clear about something. The initial complaint we received was detailed and specific. It alleged ongoing neglect, unsafe living conditions, and emotional harm. Lucas's heart stopped. However, Sandra continued, our investigation found absolutely no evidence to support any of those claims. Your daughter is healthy, happy, well cared for, and clearly loved. Mrs. Chen is an excellent caregiver. Your living situation is modest but clean and safe. You have stable employment and income. In short, this appears to be a malicious complaint filed with intent to harass. Lucas felt like he might pass out from relief. So you're closing the case? We're closing the case, Sandra confirmed, and we're flagging the original complaint as potentially fraudulent. If we receive any additional complaints about you, we'll be looking very carefully at the source. After they left, Lucas sat on the floor and let himself shake. Mia climbed into his lap, concerned. Daddy okay? Yeah, baby. Daddy's okay. Why were those ladies here? Just checking to make sure you're happy. I'm happy, Mia said simply. Are you happy? Lucas hugged her tight. Yeah, I really am. That night, Lucas told Victoria what had happened. She listened with her arms crossed, her expression getting darker with every word. I'm going to destroy him, she said when he finished. Victoria, no, I'm serious. He tried to take your daughter away. He weaponized the state against you because he couldn't get to me. That's unforgivable. What are you going to do? I'm going to Boston next week like I planned, and I'm going to make Richard wish he'd never heard my name. Lucas had never seen her like this, cold and controlled and absolutely lethal. It should have scared him. Instead, he felt grateful that she was on his side. The week before Victoria left for Boston was strange. They both knew it was coming, knew she had to go, but neither of them wanted to talk about it. Instead, they worked together at the café during the day and spent the evenings with Mia, building a routine that felt almost like a real family. Lucas caught himself thinking in dangerous terms, thinking about what it would be like if this was permanent. If Victoria stayed, if they built a life together, if Mia grew up with 2 parents instead of 1. But he didn't say any of it out loud, because saying it would make it real. And making it real would mean acknowledging how terrified he was of losing it. The night before Victoria left, they had dinner together in her apartment. It was bigger than Lucas's, 2 rooms instead of 1, with a small balcony that overlooked the ocean. Victoria had cooked, which surprised him. You can cook? He said, watching her plate pasta carbonara with professional efficiency. I had to learn when I left. Turns out you can't survive on takeout forever. She set a plate in front of him. It's not as good as Marco's, but it's edible. It was better than edible. It was delicious. They ate in comfortable silence, and then Victoria poured them each a glass of wine and led him out to the balcony. The ocean was dark and vast, waves crashing against the rocks below. I'm scared, Victoria said quietly. Of going back? Of not coming back. She gripped the balcony railing. What if I get there and I can't leave again? What if the pressure is too much, or they find some legal way to force me to stay, or what if I'm not strong enough? Lucas moved behind her and wrapped his arms around her waist. You're the strongest person I know. I'm really not. Yes, you are. You walked away from billions of dollars because you wanted a different life. You built this cafe from nothing. You hired a desperate stranger and gave him a chance. You came back here instead of staying in Boston where it was comfortable. He tightened his arms. You're going to go there. You're going to face all those people, and you're going to come home, because this is where you belong. Victoria turned in his arms and kissed him, desperate and a little bit broken. Promise you'll be here when I get back. Where else would I go? I don't know. Anywhere. Somewhere better than a failing cafe in a town nobody's heard of. This isn't just a cafe to me, Lucas said. It's home. Your home. Victoria made a sound that was half laugh, half sob. How did this happen? How did you become the person I can't imagine living without? Same way you became that for me. We just kept showing up. They made love that night, slow and tender and full of unspoken promises. Afterward, they lay tangled together in Victoria's bed, listening to the ocean and each other's breathing. Come with me, Victoria said suddenly. What? To Boston. Come with me. Lucas propped himself up on one elbow. I can't. The cafe. Marco can handle it for a few days, and Mia, we can bring her. Make it a trip. Bakey. Victoria, this is something you need to do alone. Why? Because they're your family, your company, your past, and you need to face them without me there as a crutch. Lucas stroked her hair. But I'll be here when you get back. I promise. Victoria was quiet for a long moment. Then she nodded. Okay. Okay? Yeah, you're right. I need to do this myself. She looked at him. But when I get back, we're going to talk about what this is, about what we want, about the future. I'd like that. Lucas left before sunrise, sneaking back to his own apartment like a teenager. He found Mia already awake, playing with her toy cars on the floor. Where were you, she asked, talking to Miss Vicky. All night? Lucas felt his face heat. Yeah, all night. Mia studied him with the unnerving perceptiveness of 4-year-olds. Do you love her? The question caught Lucas completely off guard. That's complicated, baby. Mommy said love is never complicated. You either do or you don't. Mommy said a lot of things that weren't true. Mia considered this. I think you love Miss Vicky. You smile different when she's around. Lucas sat down next to his daughter. How do I smile different? Like you're not sad anymore. The observation hit Lucas harder than it should have. He pulled Mia into his lap. You're too smart for your own good, you know that? That's what Mrs. Chen says. Mrs. Chen is right. That afternoon, Lucas drove Victoria to the bus station. She'd refused to fly, said she needed the time to think, to prepare. Her single bag was small enough to carry on, everything she needed condensed into one efficient package. They stood next to the idling bus, neither of them quite ready to say goodbye. This is stupid, Victoria said. It's only a few days. I know. I'm being ridiculous. You're not. She looked at him, and Lucas saw real fear in her eyes. What if everything changes? Then we'll deal with it. Lucas cupped her face. But nothing is going to change how I feel about you, so go. Do what you need to do. And come home. Victoria kissed him, quick and hard, then climbed onto the bus before she could change her mind. Lucas watched through the window as she found her seat, watched her turn to look at him one last time, watched her mouth the words, I'll come back. He stood there until the bus pulled away, until it disappeared around the corner, until there was nothing left to see. Then he went back to the cafe and threw himself into work, trying not to count the hours until she returned. The cafe felt emptier without Victoria. Lucas knew it was psychological. The place was just as busy, the customers just as demanding, the work just as endless. But there was a Victoria-shaped hole in everything he did. Marco noticed. You're moping. I'm not moping. You're totally moping. It's pathetic. She's been gone for 6 hours. And you're already useless. What are you going to be like on day 3? Lucas threw a dish towel at him. Marco caught it and laughed. It's good, Marco said more seriously, that you care about each other. This place needed that. The cafe? All of us. We were all just kind of existing before you showed up, going through the motions. But you and Victoria, you reminded us what it's like to actually give a damn. Lucas didn't know what to say to that, so he just nodded and went back to washing dishes. That night, Victoria called from a hotel in Boston. Her voice sounded small and far away. How was the trip? Lucas asked. Long, exhausting. I'm meeting with Richard tomorrow morning. You ready? No, but I'm doing it anyway. She paused. I miss you. I miss you too. Is that weird? We've barely been together and I already can't imagine being apart. If it's weird, then we're both weird. Chug? Mom. Victoria laughed, and Lucas felt some of the tension ease from his shoulders. They talked for another hour about nothing and everything. Mia's new favorite game, a problem with the cafe's hot water heater, the terrible hotel coffee Victoria was drinking. When they finally hung up, Lucas felt better. Not good, but better. The next day dragged. Lucas kept checking his phone, waiting for updates. Victoria had said she'd text after the meeting, but he didn't hear anything until late afternoon. When the text finally came, it was short. Call me when you can. Lucas's stomach dropped. He told Marco he was taking a break and went out to the alley behind the cafe. Victoria answered on the first ring. Hey, how'd it go? It was... She made a frustrated sound. Richard showed up with 3 lawyers and a buyout offer. A what? They want to buy me out of my shares in the family trust. Offer me a lump sum to walk away completely and sign a non-compete agreement. Lucas felt cold. How much? $200 million. The number was incomprehensible. Lucas leaned against the brick wall trying to process it. That's insane. I know. What did you say? I told them I'd think about it. Lucas's heart stopped. You're considering it? Yeah. No. But I can't just say no without thinking it through. That's what they expect, me being impulsive and emotional. So I'm going to make them wait. Victoria's voice hardened. And while they're waiting, Patricia's going to dig into Richard's finances and find out exactly what he's been doing with the company. Because I don't trust him, and I want leverage. You're playing chess with them. I learned from the best. My father might have been an asshole, but he taught me how to handle people like Richard. She paused. I miss you. I miss you too. When are you coming home? 2 more days. I have meetings with the board tomorrow, and then I'm done. I'm coming home, and we're going to figure out what comes next. After they hung up, Lucas sat in the alley for a long time, staring at the ocean and thinking about $200 million. It was more money than he could conceptualize, more money than anyone needed in a lifetime. And Victoria had walked away from even more than that to be here. The realization made something click into place in Lucas's mind. She wasn't staying because she had to. She was staying because she wanted to. And that meant something. That meant everything. Victoria's last day in Boston started with her lawyer calling at 6 in the morning. We found something, Patricia said without preamble. Richard's been siphoning funds from the company. Small amounts over 2 years, buried in consulting fees and contractor payments. Adds up to about $12 million. Victoria sat up in the hotel bed, suddenly wide awake. Can you prove it? I've got bank records, falsified invoices, the whole thing. He's been clever about it, but not clever enough. Patricia paused. What do you want to do? Victoria thought about it. Thought about Richard showing up at her cafe, threatening Lucas, calling CPS on a 4-year-old. Thought about $200 million and the life she'd built and the choice she'd already made before she ever got on that bus. Set up a meeting, she said. Richard, the board, everyone, this afternoon, and bring everything you found. The meeting happened in the same conference room where her father used to hold court, all glass and steel and expensive furniture designed to intimidate. Richard sat at the head of the table like he owned it, flanked by his lawyers. The board members filled the other seats, looking uncomfortable. Victoria walked in with Patricia at her side and a flash drive in her pocket. Victoria, Richard said smoothly, I'm glad you reconsidered. Shall we discuss the buyout terms? No, Victoria said. We're going to discuss fraud instead. The room went silent. Richard's smile didn't waver, but something flickered in his eyes. I'm sorry? Bashem, tus, usti. Patricia connected her laptop to the projector. For the past 2 years, you've been embezzling from the Hale family trust. $12 million in fraudulent consulting fees, fake contractor payments, and inflated expenses. The screen filled with bank records, highlighted transactions, email threads. We have documentation of every transaction. Richard stood up. This is absurd. I've dedicated my life to this company. You've dedicated yourself to stealing from it, Victoria interrupted. And I have proof. The question is what happens next? One of the board members, an older woman named Margaret, leaned forward. What are you proposing? Victoria looked directly at Richard. You resign. Immediately. You sign over your shares to the trust at current market value, no premium. You agree to repay the $12 million over the next 10 years, and you sign a statement admitting to the fraud. And if I don't? Then I go to the police. You get charged with embezzlement, fraud, maybe racketeering if Patricia can make it stick. You lose everything and probably go to prison. Victoria's voice was ice. Your choice. Richard's face had gone pale. His lawyers were whispering frantically, but Victoria could see the calculation in his eyes. He was weighing the options, trying to find an angle. You destroy the company's reputation, he said finally. The scandal would hurt everyone. But by I don't care, Victoria said simply. You came after someone I love. You tried to take his daughter away. You think I won't burn this whole thing down to protect him? The silence that followed was absolute. Margaret looked at Victoria with something like respect. I'll need to consult with my attorneys, Richard said stiffly. You have 1 hour, Victoria said. After that, I'm making a phone call. She walked out without waiting for a response. Patricia followed her into the hallway. That was brutal, Patricia said, and she sounded impressed. He earned it. Victoria's hands were shaking slightly. She shoved them in her pockets. Will he take the deal? Probably. The alternative is worse. Patricia studied her. You really would have gone to the police? In a heartbeat. Then you're more like your father than you think. Victoria flinched. Don't say that. I mean it as a compliment. Your father was ruthless when he needed to be, but he was also loyal to the people who mattered to him. Patricia softened slightly. Patricia, you're protecting someone you care about. That's not a bad thing. 53 minutes later, Richard's lawyer called. They'd accept the terms. Victoria signed the paperwork in a different conference room, surrounded by lawyers and witnesses. Richard wasn't there. He'd sent his attorney to handle it. Probably couldn't stand to face her. When it was done, Margaret walked Victoria to the elevator. What you did today took courage, the older woman said. Your father would have been proud. My father would have called it weakness. Settling personal scores instead of focusing on profit. Your father was wrong about a lot of things. Margaret pressed the elevator button. You're free now, you know. The trust is secure. Richard's gone. The company will be fine without you. You can actually live your life. That's the plan. Good. Margaret smiled. For what it's worth, I think you made the right choice. Walking away from all this. Money doesn't buy happiness. Just bigger problems. The elevator doors opened and Victoria stepped inside. My aunt used to say the same thing. Mate? Your aunt was a smart woman. The doors closed and Victoria leaned against the elevator wall, letting herself feel the full weight of what she'd just done. She'd faced down her past, protected the people she loved, and cut the last ties that bound her to the life she'd left behind. Now she could go home. Lucas was in the kitchen when his phone rang. He almost didn't answer. The lunch rush was brutal and they were running behind, but then he saw Victoria's name and his hand moved before his brain could catch up. Hey, he said, pressing the phone between his ear and shoulder while he dried a plate. How'd it go? Richard's gone. I had him removed from the company, and I made sure he can't come near you or Mia again. But Lucas nearly dropped the plate. What? How? Turns out he was embezzling. My lawyer found proof. I gave him a choice, resign quietly or go to prison. He chose resignation. Victoria, he tried to take Mia from you, Victoria said, and her voice was hard. He doesn't get to walk away from that without consequences. Lucas set down the plate and moved to a quieter corner. Are you okay, Vissa? I'm better than okay, I'm free. He heard her take a breath. I'm coming home, Lucas. I'll be there tomorrow morning, and when I get there, we need to talk. About what? About everything. About what we're building. About the future. Her voice softened. About us. Lucas's heart was doing complicated things. I'll be there. After they hung up, he stood in the kitchen for a moment, trying to process everything. Marco appeared at his elbow. You look weird. Good weird, but weird. Victoria's coming back tomorrow. I know. She already texted me to make sure I'd be here to cover the cafe. Lucas blinked. Why would she need you to cover? Because she said she's taking you and Mia somewhere. Wouldn't say where, just said to keep Saturday open. Marco grinned. She's planning something. What kind of something? The kind where you probably want to shower and wear clean clothes. Lucas spent the rest of the day in a state of barely controlled anxiety. He cleaned his apartment, made sure Mia had clean clothes, and tried not to obsess over what Victoria wanted to talk about. The future could mean anything. It could mean she was staying for good, or it could mean she was leaving. It could mean she wanted to take their relationship to the next level, or it could mean she'd realized what a mistake she was making. By the time he went to bed, he'd convinced himself of at least 17 different scenarios, none of them good. Victoria's bus arrived at 8:15. Lucas was waiting at the station with Mia, who'd insisted on bringing a picture she'd drawn, Victoria standing in front of the cafe with a smile that took up half her face. When Victoria stepped off the bus, she looked tired but lighter somehow, like she'd set down something heavy and could finally breathe. She saw them, and her whole face transformed. You didn't have to come get me, she said, but she was already hugging Mia. We wanted to, Lucas said. Welcome home. I drew you a picture, Mia announced, shoving the paper at Victoria. That's you being happy. Victoria looked at the drawing and her eyes got suspiciously bright. It's perfect. Thank you, sweetheart. They drove back to town in Lucas's beat-up sedan, Mia chattering in the back seat while Victoria and Lucas stole glances at each other. There was something electric in the air between them, something unspoken and important. When they got back to the cafe, Marco was already there with coffee and breakfast sandwiches. Welcome back, boss. Thanks, Marco. Victoria grabbed her bag from the car. You good to handle things today? I got it. You three go do whatever mysterious thing you're planning. Mia perked up. Where are we going? Victoria looked at Lucas. There's a place I want to show you about an hour north, if you're willing to take a drive. Always, Lucas said. They drove up the coast with the windows down and the ocean on their right. Mia fell asleep in the back seat, and Lucas and Victoria talked about everything except the thing they really needed to talk about. The weather. The cafe. Marco's terrible jokes. Anything to avoid the weight of the conversation they both knew was coming. Finally, Victoria directed him to turn off the highway onto a narrow road that wound through pine trees. They drove for another 10 minutes before the trees opened up to reveal a property that made Lucas's breath catch. It was beautiful in a wild, untamed way. 5 acres of land sloping down to a private beach. An old house sitting at the center like it had grown there. The house was small but solid, with a wraparound porch and windows that faced the ocean. Behind it was a larger building, maybe a barn or a workshop, Lucas couldn't tell. What is this place, Fikun? Lucas asked. It was my aunt's summer house. She left it to me in her will. Victoria got out of the car, and Lucas followed. She used to come here to paint, said it was the only place she could think clearly. They walked toward the house, and Lucas could see that it needed work. The porch was sagging in places, the paint was peeling, and at least 2 windows were cracked. But underneath the neglect was something worth saving. Why are we here? Lucas asked. Victoria took his hand. Because I want to show you what I'm thinking about for the future, and I want to know if you can see it too. She led him around back to the larger building. It had clearly been a workshop once. High ceilings, big windows, open space. Victoria walked to the center and turned in a slow circle. I've been thinking about the cafe, she said. About how it's barely breaking even, about how we're always one disaster away from closing. And I realized something. I don't want to just run a cafe. I want to build something bigger. Lucas felt his stomach tighten. What does that mean? I want to turn this place into a culinary school. A small one, just a dozen students at a time. Teach people who can't afford traditional culinary programs, give them real skills and real opportunities. The house could be student housing, the workshop could be the teaching kitchen, and the cafe could be where the students do their practical work. Lucas stared at her. That's incredible. It gets a... It would take money, a lot of it, but I have that now. What I don't have is someone who knows how to run a business from the ground up, someone who understands hard work and second chances and what it means to rebuild from nothing. She looked at him directly. I want you to be my partner, Lucas. Not just in the cafe, but in this, all of it. Victorious? Ma'am. I'm not asking you to marry me, she said quickly. Not yet, anyway. I'm asking if you want to build something real with me. Something that matters. Something that gives people like us, people who've lost everything and are trying to start over, a chance to become something more. Lucas couldn't speak. Oh, je sais, Lucas. The scope of what she was proposing was enormous. It wasn't just a job or a relationship. It was a whole life, a future, a purpose. What about Mia? He managed finally. There's a great school in the next town over. Good teachers, small classes, ocean science program that she'd love. And there's space here for her to run around, to be a kid, to grow up somewhere safe. Victoria stepped closer. I'm not trying to replace her mother. I'm just trying to be part of your lives. Both of your lives. If you'll let me. Lucas looked out at the ocean, at the wild beach and the old house, and the possibility of everything Victoria was offering. He thought about the man he'd been 3 months ago, broken and desperate and barely holding on. And he thought about the man he was now, someone who'd found his strength again, someone who mattered, someone who was building something worth keeping. Yes, he said. Victoria blinked. Yes? Yes to all of it. The school, the partnership, the future. Yes to building something together. Yes to you. He cupped her face with his hands. I love you. I think I've loved you since the day you hired me without asking questions, and I want to spend the rest of my life figuring out what we can build together. Victoria kissed him, and it tasted like salt air and coffee and coming home. When they pulled apart, she was crying and smiling at the same time. I love you too, she said. And I'm terrified because I've never done this before. The whole being in love thing, the partnership thing, the building a life with someone thing. I'm going to mess it up sometimes. So am I. But we'll figure it out? Yeah, Lucas said. We'll figure it out. They heard footsteps on the gravel and turned to find Mia standing there, rubbing sleep from her eyes. Are we staying here? She asked. Victoria knelt down to Mia's level. Would you like that? Living here, going to a new school, having a beach in your backyard? Mia considered this seriously. Will you be here too? If that's okay with you. Mia looked at her father, then at Victoria, then back at her father. Are you going to get married? Lucas laughed. Eventually, probably, but we're taking it slow. Okay. Mia took Victoria's hand. Can I pick out my room? Absolutely. They spent the rest of the morning exploring the property. The house needed work, a lot of work, but it had good bones. There were 3 bedrooms upstairs, a kitchen that hadn't been updated since the 70s, and a living room with a stone fireplace that still worked. The workshop was even better. High ceilings, industrial-grade appliances that Victoria's aunt had apparently used for her annual family dinners, and enough space to accommodate a full teaching kitchen. Lucas could see it. Could see students learning to make pasta from scratch. Could see Victoria teaching them the same patience and persistence she'd learned running the cafe. Could see Mia growing up surrounded by people who understood that everyone deserves a second chance. They drove back to town that afternoon with plans spinning between them. Lucas would help renovate the property while continuing to run the cafe. Victoria would work with architects and licensing boards to get the school approved. They'd hire more staff, expand the cafe's menu, create a pipeline from classroom to real-world experience. It would take time, probably a year before they could accept their first students. But they had time now. They had each other. That night, after Mia was asleep, Lucas and Victoria sat on the floor of his tiny apartment with a bottle of wine and a notebook full of sketches and ideas. "What if it doesn't work?" Lucas said quietly. "What if we pour everything into this and it fails?" "Then we fail together," Victoria said, "and we figure out what comes next. But at least we'll have tried." "You're really willing to risk everything on this? On me?" Victoria set down her wine glass. "Lucas, 3 months ago I was hiding from my life, pretending to be someone I wasn't, terrified that if anyone knew the truth, they'd either hate me or want something from me. And then you walked in with nothing but a sleeping kid and desperation in your eyes. And you didn't want anything from me except a chance. You saw me, not the money, not the name, not the potential, just me. And you stayed anyway." She took his hand. "You're not a risk. You're the best decision I ever made." Lucas pulled her close and held on tight. They stayed like that for a long time, wrapped around each other on the floor of a cramped apartment above a failing café, planning a future that felt both impossible and inevitable. Over the next 6 months, everything changed and nothing changed. The café kept running, busier than ever, as word spread about the culinary school that was coming. Lucas and Victoria worked themselves to exhaustion renovating the property, stripping old wallpaper and refinishing floors and arguing good-naturedly about paint colors. Mia started at her new school and made friends immediately, coming home every day with stories about tide pools and marine biology. Marco became the cafe's head chef, training the first batch of students who would eventually cycle through the program. Mrs. Chen agreed to help with childcare at the new house, moving into a small cottage on the property that Victoria had renovated just for her. And Lucas and Victoria learned how to be together. Not perfectly, not without fights or misunderstandings or moments of doubt, but honestly. They learned each other's rhythms, each other's boundaries, each other's breaking points, and how to shore each other up when things got hard. The grand opening of the Hale Culinary Institute happened on a Saturday in October. 12 students arrived that morning, each of them carrying their own stories of failure and second chances. Lucas watched them file into the teaching kitchen and felt something settle in his chest. This was what mattered. Not the money or the success or the recognition, just this. People getting a chance to rebuild their lives, to learn a skill, to become something more than their worst moments. Victoria stood next to him, her hand in his. "We did it." "Yeah," Lucas said, "we really did." That night, after the students had settled in and the staff had gone home and Mia was asleep in her new room with its ocean view, Lucas and Victoria sat on the porch and watched the sun set over the water. "I need to tell you something," Victoria said. Lucas's stomach tightened. "What?" She pulled a small box from her pocket and opened it. Inside was a ring, simple silver band with a single small diamond. "This was my aunt's," Victoria said. "She left it to me with a note that said I should give it to someone who makes me brave enough to live the life I actually want, instead of the life I think I'm supposed to have." She looked at Lucas. "That's you. You make me brave. And I know we said we'd take it slow, but I don't want to wait anymore. I want to marry you. I want to build this life with you. I want to be Mia's stepmother and your wife and your partner in every sense of the word." Bo? Ichan. Lucas couldn't breathe. "Are you asking me to marry you?" "I'm asking you to marry me." "Yes," Lucas said. And then he was kissing her and laughing and crying all at once. "Yes, absolutely yes." Victoria slipped the ring onto his finger, because of course she'd gotten him a ring instead of waiting for him to propose to her, and it fit perfectly. They got married 3 months later in the teaching kitchen with Mia as the flower girl and Marco as the best man, and Mrs. Chen crying in the front row. It was small and simple and perfect, just family and close friends and the 12 students who'd become part of their extended family. Lucas stood at the altar, which was really just a cleared space between the stoves and the prep tables, and watched Victoria walk toward him, and he thought about the journey that had brought them here. The failures and the fear and the desperate gamble of walking into a cafe with nothing to offer except willingness to work. He thought he was asking for a job. Turned out he'd been asking for a life. When the officiant asked if he took Victoria to be his wife, Lucas said yes without hesitation. And when Victoria said her vows, promising to love him through success and failure, through good days and terrible ones, through all the messy, complicated reality of building a life together, he believed her. Because they'd already been doing it. For months now, they'd been choosing each other every single day. The wedding was just making it official. The reception was loud and chaotic, with food from the cafe and music from a local band and dancing that went on until midnight. Mia fell asleep on a pile of coats in the corner, and someone's student knocked over a wedding cake that had to be hastily reassembled, and Marco gave a speech that was equal parts touching and inappropriate. It was messy and imperfect and exactly what they needed. Later, after everyone had gone home and the kitchen was cleaned and Mia was tucked into bed, Lucas and Victoria stood on the porch and looked out at the ocean. "No regrets?" Victoria asked. "Not even one," Lucas said. "You?" "Just that I didn't find you sooner." Lucas pulled her close. "We found each other when we needed to. That's what matters." They stood there in the dark, listening to the waves and each other's breathing, and Lucas felt something he hadn't felt in years: peace. Not the absence of problems or challenges or hard days ahead, just the quiet certainty that whatever came next, they'd face it together. The cafe kept running, the school grew, Mia thrived. Lucas and Victoria built a life that looked nothing like what either of them had planned and everything like what they actually needed: messy and complicated and real. Because that's what love was, Lucas had learned. Not the fairy tale version where everything worked out perfectly, but the real version where two broken people found each other and decided that broken together was better than whole apart. Where second chances led to third and fourth chances, where failure wasn't the end, but just another beginning. Years later, when students would ask Lucas how he'd ended up here, running a culinary school, married to a woman who'd walked away from billions to wash dishes, living a life that felt too good to be true, he'd tell them the truth. He'd tell them about showing up with $17 and a sleeping kid, about Victoria hiring him without asking questions, about learning that sometimes the best things in life come from the moments when you have nothing left to lose. He'd tell them that success isn't about money or status or getting back what you lost. It's about building something new from the wreckage. It's about finding people who see you at your worst and choose to stay anyway. It's about second chances and hard work and the courage to believe that your story doesn't end with your failures. And then he'd get back to work, because the dishes didn't wash themselves, and the students needed guidance, and Victoria was calling him from the cafe about some crisis that probably wasn't actually a crisis, but would require his attention anyway. Because this was his life now, not perfect, not easy, but his. And that was more than enough.